I was standing in the back of the courtroom when my mother looked directly at me and said, "You were always the mistake we had to tolerate." Those words hit harder than any slap ever could. I'm 25 years old, and I've spent my entire life trying to earn their love, trying to be enough, trying to matter, but I never did. My name is Emma, and this is the story of how my parents spent $300,000 on my brother's wedding while leaving me drowning in debt, and how a judge finally made them pay for it. The courtroom was cold that morning. February cold, the kind that seeps into your bones and stays there. I sat alone on a wooden bench, my hands trembling as I clutched a folder filled with documents. Bank statements, loan agreements, text messages, everything I needed to prove what they'd done to me. My parents sat on the opposite side with my brother Daniel and his wife Jessica. They looked perfect, polished, like a family from a magazine cover. Daniel wore a tailored navy suit. Jessica had her blonde hair swept into an elegant bun. My mother's pearls gleamed under the fluorescent lights. And then there was me, wearing a dress I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. My hair tied back in a simple ponytail. Dark circles under my eyes from countless sleepless nights wondering how I'd pay next month's rent. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Judge Morrison entered. She was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that said she'd seen every kind of family drama imaginable. She sat down, adjusted her glasses, and looked at the case file. "This is a civil suit," she began. "Emma Carter versus Robert and Linda Carter. The plaintiff alleges financial discrimination and seeks restitution for educational debts that she claims her parents promised to cover but failed to pay." My lawyer, Mr. Hayes, stood up. He was a kind man in his 40s who'd taken my case pro bono after hearing my story. "Your Honor, my client has been systematically financially abused by her parents for years. While they funded her brother's lavish lifestyle, including a $300,000 wedding, they left her with over $80,000 in student loan debt despite repeated promises to help." My mother actually scoffed, out loud, in a courtroom. "Promises aren't contracts," my father's lawyer said smoothly. He was expensive, the kind of lawyer my parents could afford because they had money. Money they'd never shared with me. I felt my throat tighten, the familiar feeling of being invisible, of not mattering. But then Mr. Hayes said something that made everyone in that room go silent. "Your Honor, we have written evidence, emails, text messages, and we have a recording of Mrs. Carter explicitly stating that Emma wasn't worth the investment because she's just a daughter." My mother's face went pale. Jessica whispered something to Daniel. He looked uncomfortable for the first time since we'd walked in. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "I'd like to hear that recording." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. This was it. The moment everything could change. Or the moment I'd lose everything and prove to myself that I really was worthless. Mr. Hayes approached the bench with his phone. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. And then my mother's voice filled the room, cold and clear. "Why would we pay for Emma's education? She's just going to get married and waste it anyway. Daniel is our legacy. Daniel is our investment. Emma was always just there." I watched my mother's face crumble as her own words condemned her. The silence that followed that recording was deafening. I could see my mother's hands shaking. She tried to maintain her composure, that perfect mask she'd worn my entire life, but cracks were forming. Deep, irreparable cracks. My father reached over and squeezed her hand. Not in comfort, in warning. I knew that gesture. I'd seen it 1,000 times growing up. It meant, don't say anything stupid. It meant, we'll deal with this later. It meant, control yourself. Judge Morrison replayed the recording. Twice. Each time, those words stabbed deeper into whatever was left of my heart. Emma was always just there. Like I was furniture. Like I was a houseplant they'd forgotten to water but couldn't be bothered to throw away. "Mrs. Carter," Judge Morrison said, her voice sharp as glass, "is this your voice on this recording?" My mother stood up slowly. She smoothed down her cream-colored blazer. "Your Honor, that was taken out of context. I was upset that day. Emma had just, yes or no, Mrs. Carter." The judge wasn't playing games. Yes, my mother whispered. But I didn't mean, sit down. My mother sat. For the first time in my life, I watched her follow someone else's orders without argument. It felt surreal. Judge Morrison turned to me. Miss Carter, please approach the witness stand. I'd like to hear your testimony. My legs felt like jelly as I stood up. Mr. Hayes gave me an encouraging nod. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. The whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Miss Carter, Judge Morrison began, tell me about your relationship with your parents. Start from the beginning. I took a deep breath. Where was the beginning? Was it the day Daniel was born and I became invisible? Was it my 10th birthday when they forgot to show up to my school play because they were at Daniel's soccer tournament? Was it high school graduation when they gave him a car and gave me a gift card to Target? I've always known I was different, I started, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Daniel was the golden child, the son, the heir. I was just the daughter, the afterthought. Can you give specific examples? The judge asked. When I was 17, I got accepted to Stanford University with a partial scholarship. I needed $15,000 for the first year to cover the rest. My parents said they'd think about it. 2 weeks later, they bought Daniel a brand new BMW for his 21st birthday. It cost $45,000. I heard Jessica gasp softly. Even she didn't know this story. Did you end up going to Stanford? Judge Morrison asked. No, Your Honor. I went to community college instead. I worked 3 jobs to pay for it. I slept 4 hours a night for 2 years. I graduated with honors, but I had to take out loans for my last 2 years when I transferred to finish my bachelor's degree. My father's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, the Carters were under no legal obligation to pay for their adult daughter's education. Many parents don't pay for college, but many parents also don't spend $300,000 on their son's wedding, while their daughter is eating ramen noodles for dinner every night because she can't afford groceries, Mr. Hayes shot back. That's enough, my father suddenly shouted, standing up. His face was red. Veins bulged in his neck. You ungrateful little brat. We gave you a roof over your head. We fed you. We clothed you. And this is how you repay us? By dragging us to court? By humiliating us? Judge Morrison slammed her gavel. Mr. Carter, sit down immediately or I will hold you in contempt. But my father wasn't done. You were always jealous of Daniel, always whining about not getting enough attention. Maybe if you'd been more like him, successful, respectable, accomplished, we would have invested more in you. Those words should have destroyed me. A year ago they would have. But standing in that courtroom, with a judge who actually listened, with a lawyer who believed me, something inside me shifted. I looked my father directly in the eyes and said, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree in biochemical engineering while working 3 jobs. Daniel barely passed his business degree and you paid someone to write half his papers. So tell me again who's more accomplished. Daniel's jaw dropped. Jessica turned to look at him, her perfect composure finally cracking. Is that true? She asked him quietly. The silence was answer enough. Daniel's face turned the color of a tomato. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again like a fish gasping for air. That's not... Emma, you're twisting things, he stammered. But Jessica wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at my parents, and I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. She'd married into what she thought was a perfect, successful family. She was realizing it was all smoke and mirrors. Your Honor, my father's lawyer interjected, trying to regain control. We're getting off track. Miss Carter's academic achievements, while commendable, don't establish any legal obligation. Actually, Mr. Hayes interrupted, pulling out another document. They do. Because Mr. and Mrs. Carter signed a written agreement when Emma was 16 years old, promising to fund her college education equally to any funds they provided for Daniel's education. The courtroom went dead silent. My mother's face drained of all color. That was just a family agreement, not a legal document. You signed it in front of a notary, Mrs. Carter. You had it witnessed by your accountant. That makes it legally binding. Mr. Hayes placed the document on the judge's bench. I watched my mother's world collapse in real time. She'd forgotten about that agreement. It was made during one of her good mother phases, when she was trying to impress her book club friends. She'd gathered us all in the living room, made a big show of being fair and equal, and signed that paper with a flourish. She never thought I'd actually use it. Judge Morrison examined the document carefully. She put on her reading glasses, studied every line, every signature. The minutes felt like hours. "This appears to be legitimate," she finally said. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, did you fulfill the obligations outlined in this agreement?" My father stood up. His lawyer tried to pull him back down, but he shook him off. "Your Honor, we've given that girl everything. We raised her, we housed her, Answer the question, Mr. Carter. Did you provide equal financial support for Emma's education as you did for Daniel's?" The silence was deafening. "We made different choices for different children," my mother said, her voice icy. "Daniel had more potential. He was building a business. He was a son," I said from the witness stand. My voice was stronger now, steadier. "That's what you mean. He was a son and I was just a daughter. You thought I'd get married and become someone else's responsibility." "That's not true," my mother hissed. But her eyes told a different story. "Really?" I pulled out my phone. "Should I play the recording from my college graduation? The one where Dad told his golf buddies that paying for my education would be throwing money into a black hole because I'd probably just become a housewife?" My father's face went pale. He'd forgotten I was standing right behind him that day. He'd forgotten I existed, as usual, until I became a problem. "You recorded us?" my mother asked, her voice shaking with rage. "You've been spying on your own family?" "No," I said calmly. "I've been documenting abuse." "There's a difference." Jessica stood up abruptly. "Daniel, we need to talk. Outside. Now." "Jess, wait. Now." They left the courtroom. I watched them go. Watched my brother's perfect life starting to unravel just like mine had been unraveling for 25 years. Judge Morrison called for a 15-minute recess. Mr. Hayes came over to me. "You're doing great, Emma. Stay strong." But I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was breaking apart and rebuilding myself at the same time. Like I was finally letting go of the daughter who'd begged for crumbs of love and becoming the woman who demanded what she deserved. During the recess, I went to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face and stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My mascara was smudged. But there was something different about the woman staring back at me. She looked tired, hurt, broken, but she also looked free. When I came out of the bathroom, I heard voices coming from the hallway. Jessica and Daniel were arguing. I shouldn't have listened. But I did. "Your parents spent $300,000 on our wedding. Daniel and your sister was eating ramen noodles. Do you understand how messed up that is?" "It's not my fault Emma couldn't manage her money." "She was 22 years old, working 3 jobs, and putting herself through college while you were partying on your parents' dime. I thought I married into a good family. I thought your parents were generous, loving people. They are. They're monsters, Daniel. And you let them be monsters because it benefited you." There was a long silence. Then Jessica said something that made my heart stop. "I want a divorce." I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. I couldn't believe what I'd just heard. "You don't mean that," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "Jess, baby, please. You can't what? Can't leave you because I finally see who you really are? Your parents destroyed your sister's life and you watched. You helped. You took and took and took while she had nothing. That's not fair. I didn't ask them to favor me. But you never stopped them, did you?" Jessica's voice was cold now, distant. "You never once stood up for her. You never once said, 'Mom, Dad, this isn't right.' You just kept taking the money. The cars, the designer clothes, the wedding of the century, while your baby sister was drowning. She's only 2 years younger than me. She's your sister, Daniel. And you abandoned her." I heard footsteps. I quickly moved away from the wall and pretended to be walking back from the bathroom. Jessica came around the corner first. Her eyes were red, mascara running down her perfect porcelain cheeks. She stopped when she saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Two women caught in the wreckage of the Carter family dysfunction. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know. I swear to God, Emma, I didn't know what they'd done to you." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hate her. She'd had the wedding of my dreams, worn a dress that cost more than my car, honeymooned in Bali while I was working double shifts at a diner. But she wasn't the enemy. She was just another person my parents had used as a prop in their perfect family fantasy. "It's not your fault," I finally said. "I'm leaving him." She said it like a confession, like she needed me to hear it. I can't be married to someone who could watch his sister suffer and do nothing. Daniel appeared behind her. "Jess, please, can we just talk about this after—" "There's nothing to talk about." She turned to face him. "I've made up my mind. I'm calling my lawyer today." She walked away, her heels clicking against the courthouse floor. Daniel stood there looking at me like this was somehow my fault. "Are you happy now?" he asked. "You've destroyed my marriage." I felt something inside me snap. 25 years of swallowing my pain, of making myself smaller, of apologizing for existing, it all came rushing out. "I destroyed your marriage?" My voice echoed in the empty hallway. "I'm not the one who let our parents treat me like garbage. I'm not the one who took $300,000 for a wedding while my sister was in debt. I'm not the one who pretended not to see what was happening." "You're so dramatic, Emma. Always playing the victim." "Playing the victim? Daniel, they left me with $80,000 in debt while you got a BMW, a paid-off condo, and a wedding that cost more than most people's houses." My voice cracked. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't stop. "I worked 3 jobs while going to school full-time. Do you know what that's like? Do you know what it's like to fall asleep in your car between shifts because you don't have time to drive home? Do you know what it's like to choose between buying groceries and buying textbooks?" Daniel looked away. "I didn't know it was that bad." "Yes, you did. You just didn't care." "That's not true. When I called you 3 years ago, crying, telling you I couldn't afford my rent and might get evicted, what did you say?" He was silent. "You said maybe you should have made better choices. Then you went to Cabo with your friends on Mom and Dad's credit card." The bailiff appeared at the end of the hallway. "We're resuming in 2 minutes." I wiped my face and walked past Daniel without another word. I could feel his eyes on my back, but I didn't turn around. I was done looking back. Done hoping he'd suddenly become the brother I'd always needed. When we returned to the courtroom, Jessica wasn't there. My parents looked shaken. My mother's perfect makeup was smudged. My father kept whispering urgently to his lawyer. Judge Morrison took her seat. "Before we continue with testimony, I want to address something." "Mrs. Carter, Mr. Carter, I've reviewed the financial documents submitted by both parties. I've seen your tax returns, your bank statements, and the itemized expenses for your son's wedding." She paused, removing her glasses to look directly at my parents. "In my 30 years as a judge, I have seen many cases of family conflict. But rarely have I seen such a blatant, documented pattern of favoritism and financial discrimination. You spent over $400,000 on your son between his education, vehicles, housing down payment, and wedding. For your daughter, you spent less than $5,000 total after she turned 18. My mother opened her mouth to speak, but Judge Morrison held up her hand. "I'm not finished. What disturbs me most isn't just the financial disparity. It's the cruelty, the deliberate, calculated cruelty of making promises to a child and then breaking them, of watching that child struggle while lavishing excess on another, of telling your daughter, in your own recorded words, that she wasn't worth the investment." My father's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, with all due respect, parental favoritism isn't illegal. But breach of contract is. Fraud is. And what the Carters have done here borders on both." The courtroom felt electric. I could barely breathe. "We're going to take a 30-minute recess," Judge Morrison said. "And when we return, I want to hear from one more witness. Someone who I believe will shed light on the full extent of this family's dysfunction. Who could she mean? I'd submitted all my evidence." Mr. Hayes looked as confused as I felt. Then the bailiff opened the door, and someone walked in who I never expected to see again. My grandmother, my father's mother, The woman my parents had cut off 5 years ago, and she was carrying a box full of documents. Grandma Rose hadn't changed much in 5 years. She was 78 now, her silver hair cut short, her posture still remarkably straight. She wore a simple navy dress and sensible shoes. But it was her eyes that got me, sharp, alert, and filled with a determination I recognized because I saw it in the mirror every morning. "Grandma," I whispered. She looked at me and smiled. A real smile. The kind that reaches your eyes and wraps around your heart. "Hello, sweetheart." My father shot to his feet. "Mother, what are you doing here?" "Sit down, Robert," she said coolly. "You're not too old for me to put you in your place." My mother looked like she might faint. "Rose, this is a private family matter." "I am family, Linda. Or did you forget that when you banned me from seeing my granddaughter?" The judge watched this exchange with interest. "Mrs. Carter Sr., I presume? Please take the witness stand." Grandma Rose walked to the front of the courtroom with the confidence of a woman who'd survived the Great Depression, buried a husband, raised 3 sons, and wasn't about to take any nonsense from anyone. She placed her hand on the Bible and was sworn in. "Mrs. Carter," Judge Morrison began, "can you explain why you're here today and what's in that box you're carrying?" "I'm here because 5 years ago, my son and daughter-in-law cut me out of their lives. They told everyone I was becoming senile, that I was making up stories, that I couldn't be trusted. The real reason they cut me off was because I witnessed something they didn't want anyone to know about." My father's face went pale. "Mother, don't be quiet, Robert. I'm talking." She turned back to the judge. "I was at their house for dinner one night. Emma was 20 years old, home from community college for the weekend. She looked exhausted, thin. I asked her if she was eating enough, and she broke down crying. She told me she was working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, and that she'd had to drop a class because she couldn't afford the textbook." Grandma Rose's voice cracked slightly, but she continued. "I asked Robert and Linda why they weren't helping her. Do you know what Linda said to me? She said, 'We're not going to waste money on a girl who'll just get pregnant and drop out anyway.' Those were her exact words. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'd never known about this conversation. I told them that was cruel and unacceptable," Grandma continued. "I offered to pay for Emma's education myself. I have money saved, not as much as they have, but enough. And do you know what they did?" Judge Morrison leaned forward. "What did they do? They told me if I gave Emma a single penny, I would never see either of my grandchildren again. They said I was interfering with their parenting. They said I was trying to turn Emma against them. That's a lie." My mother shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You're a bitter old woman who's jealous that we made something of ourselves." "Linda, sit down," the judge ordered. But my mother was unraveling. "She's always hated me. From the day Robert married me, she's treated me like I wasn't good enough. This is her revenge." "Is it revenge to tell the truth?" Grandma Rose asked calmly. "Is it revenge to bring evidence?" She opened the box and pulled out a stack of papers. "These are copies of checks I wrote to Emma in secret over the past 5 years. Small amounts, $50 here, $100 there, sent to a P.O. box so her parents wouldn't know. I couldn't pay for her whole education without them finding out, but I did what I could." I started crying. I'd thought those anonymous money orders were from a church charity program. I'd never known they were from her. "I also have something else," Grandma Rose said. She pulled out a leather journal. "This is Robert's diary from when he was Emma's age. I found it when I was cleaning out the attic. Would you like to know what he wrote in here?" My father looked like he was going to be sick. He wrote about how his father favored his older brother, how he felt invisible and unloved, how he promised himself that if he ever had children, he'd treat them equally. He'd never make them feel the way he felt. She opened the journal and began to read. "Dad bought Marcus another car today. His 3rd one. Meanwhile, I'm driving a 15-year-old rust bucket and working 2 jobs to pay for college. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers I exist. When I have kids, I'll never do this to them. I'll make sure they all know they're loved. They'll all know they matter." The irony was suffocating. My father had become exactly what he'd hated. "Robert," Grandma Rose said, her voice breaking now. "You became your father. You did the exact thing that destroyed you, and you did it to your own daughter." My father put his face in his hands and started to cry. Not quiet tears. Loud, gasping sobs that echoed through the courtroom. Years of denial, years of justification, years of pretending he was doing the right thing. It all came crashing down. "I'm sorry," he choked out. "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." But Grandma Rose wasn't done. "There's one more thing the court should know. The reason they could afford that $300,000 wedding for Daniel. They took out a loan against Emma's inheritance." The room went silent. "What?" I whispered. "Your grandfather, my late husband, left a trust fund for both grandchildren. $200,000 each. It was supposed to be given to you when you turned 25. That was 6 months ago, Emma. Did you receive it?" I shook my head, my whole body numb. Grandma Rose looked at my parents with disgust. "They borrowed against your inheritance to fund Daniel's wedding. They never planned to tell you. They were going to let you believe your grandfather forgot about you." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I was hearing. My own parents had stolen my inheritance. Money that was meant for me, money my grandfather had specifically set aside to help me. And they'd used it to throw a party. Judge Morrison's face was stone. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, is this true?" My father couldn't even look up. My mother stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched. "Answer the question," the judge demanded. "Yes," my mother finally said. "But we were going to pay it back." "With what money?" Grandma Rose snapped. "Your mortgage to the hilt. You leased those fancy cars. You're in debt up to your eyeballs trying to maintain the image of success. There's nothing left." The walls were closing in on my parents. Their perfect facade was crumbling, and everyone could see the rot underneath. The courtroom felt like it was spinning. $200,000. My inheritance. The money my grandfather had left me because he'd always believed in me, always encouraged me, always told me I was special. And they'd stolen it. "Your Honor," Mr. Hayes said, standing up with a stack of new documents. "With Mrs. Carter Sr.'s testimony, we'd like to amend our lawsuit. We're now seeking not only the educational funds promised in the written agreement, but also the full restoration of Miss Carter's inheritance, plus interest, plus punitive damages for fraud and emotional distress." My father's lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. "Your Honor, we need time to review these new allegations." "You'll have time," Judge Morrison said coldly. "But first, I want to hear more. Mrs. Carter Sr., do you have documentation of this trust fund?" Grandma Rose pulled out more papers from her box. "I have the original trust documents, signed by my late husband and notarized. I also have bank statements showing the loan my son and daughter-in-law took against Emma's portion. And I have emails between them discussing how to hide this from Emma." She handed everything to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. While Judge Morrison reviewed the documents, I looked at my parents. Really looked at them. My mother sat rigid, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. My father was still crying, but quieter now, like a man who'd finally run out of excuses. Daniel had returned to the courtroom and was sitting behind them. He looked shell-shocked, like he was seeing his parents and himself for the first time. "These emails are damning," Judge Morrison said, looking up from the papers. "Mr. Carter, you wrote to your wife, and I quote, 'Emma will never know the difference. She thinks her grandfather forgot about her anyway. We'll use the money for Daniel's wedding and deal with the consequences later if we have to.'" My mother grabbed my father's arm. "Robert, shut up. Don't say anything else." But he pulled away from her. No, I'm done lying." He turned to look at me for the first time since the trial began. "Really look at me. Emma, I don't know what happened. I don't know when I became this person. Your mother and I, we got caught up in keeping up appearances, making sure Daniel had the perfect life, the perfect wedding. We wanted people to see us as successful. So you sacrificed me?" My voice was steady now, cold. "You threw me away so Daniel could look good? We thought you'd be fine. You were always so strong, so independent. I was 19 years old." The words exploded out of me. I was a teenager who needed her parents. I needed you to believe in me, to support me, to help me. Instead, you made me feel worthless. My mother finally spoke. You were never worthless. Daniel needed more help. He's not as naturally talented as you. He needed more support. He needed to learn to stand on his own 2 feet, Grandma Rose interjected sharply. Instead, you turned him into a spoiled, entitled man-child who can't function without Mommy and Daddy's money. Look at him. His wife just left him and he's sitting there like a lost puppy. Daniel's face flushed red. Grandma, that's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair, Daniel? She stood up from the witness stand and walked toward him. The bailiff moved to stop her, but Judge Morrison waved him off. Grandma Rose stopped right in front of Daniel. Your sister ate ramen noodles for dinner while you ate at 5-star restaurants. She drove a car held together with duct tape and prayers while you got a BMW. She worked herself to exhaustion while you partied your way through college. And not once did you think to help her. Not once did you say, hey, Mom and Dad, maybe we should make sure Emma's okay. I didn't think. That's right. You didn't think. Because you were too busy enjoying the privileges of being the favorite. Daniel looked at me then. Really looked at me. And I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Shame. Emma, he said quietly, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry. It was the first time he'd ever apologized to me for anything. Part of me wanted to accept it, to let it heal something broken between us. But another part of me, the part that had been hungry, exhausted, and alone for years, wasn't ready to forgive. Your apology doesn't pay my student loans, I said. It doesn't give me back the years I lost working myself to death. It doesn't erase the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering why I wasn't good enough for my own family to love. Judge Morrison cleared her throat. Let's take another short recess. When we return, I'll be ready to render my decision. This is a bench trial, so there's no jury to deliberate. I've heard enough. During the recess, Grandma Rose came over to me. She wrapped me in a hug that smelled like lavender and old books and everything safe from my childhood. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. Your grandfather would be proud too. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, tears streaming down my face. Why didn't you tell me about the money you were sending? About the inheritance? Your parents threatened to get a restraining order if I contacted you directly. I had to be careful. But I've been watching over you, sweetheart. Always. Mr. Hayes approached us. Emma, whatever happens next, you need to prepare yourself. The judge seems sympathetic, but there are legal limits to what she can order. I don't care about the money anymore, I said, and I realized it was true. I just want them to admit what they did. I want it on the record. I want everyone to know. You're going to get that, he assured me, and probably a lot more. When we returned to the courtroom, the energy had shifted. My parents looked defeated, broken. My mother's perfect makeup was ruined, her hair falling out of its careful style. My father sat hunched over, looking 20 years older than he had that morning. Judge Morrison entered, and we all rose. I've made my decision, she said, settling into her chair. And I want to be very clear about something before I announce it. This case isn't really about money. It's about the systematic emotional and financial abuse of a child by her parents. It's about favoritism taken to a cruel extreme. And it's about justice for a young woman who deserved so much better. She looked directly at my parents. What you did to your daughter is reprehensible. Not just legally, but morally. You broke promises. You stole her inheritance. You watched her struggle while you lived in excess. And worst of all, you made her believe she wasn't worthy of love. My mother started to cry. Real tears this time, not the controlled, dignified tears she'd shed earlier. Here is my ruling, Judge Morrison continued. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses and looked down at her notes. The silence in the courtroom was absolute. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. First, regarding the written agreement for educational funding. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you signed a legally binding contract promising to fund your daughter's education equally to your son's. You spent over $120,000 on Daniel's education, including tuition, housing, books, and living expenses. You spent less than $5,000 on Emma's. She paused, letting that sink in. I am ordering you to pay Emma Carter the sum of $115,000 to equalize the educational support, plus an additional $20,000 to cover the interest on student loans she was forced to take because you broke your promise. That's $135,000. My mother gasped. My father's face went gray. Second, regarding the inheritance. You borrowed $200,000 against Emma's trust fund without her knowledge or consent. That constitutes fraud. I am ordering you to repay that full amount within 90 days. If you cannot repay it, you will be required to liquidate assets until the debt is satisfied. Your Honor, my father's lawyer stood up. My clients don't have that kind of liquidity. They'll have to sell their home. Then they'll sell their home, Judge Morrison said flatly. They had no problem spending that money on a lavish wedding. They can find a way to return what they stole. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. $335,000. It was more than I'd ever dreamed of asking for. But the judge wasn't finished. Third, I'm awarding Emma an additional $100,000 in punitive damages for emotional distress, fraud, and the systematic financial abuse documented in this case. The recordings, emails, and testimony paint a clear picture of deliberate cruelty. $435,000. My mother let out a sound like a wounded animal. We don't have that kind of money. You're going to make us homeless. You made your daughter choose between rent and food, Judge Morrison replied coldly. You made her sleep in her car. You stole her inheritance to throw a party. Forgive me if I don't find your financial hardship particularly sympathetic. My father stood up, his legs shaking. Please, Your Honor, we'll pay the inheritance back. We'll pay the educational funds. But the punitive damages, please, we'll lose everything. You should have thought of that before you treated your daughter like she was disposable. Judge Morrison turned to me. Miss Carter, I want you to understand something. Money can't undo the pain you've suffered. It can't give you back the years you lost, but it can give you security, freedom, the chance to live without the crushing weight of debt. And it sends a message that what was done to you was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. I nodded, unable to speak through my tears. Finally, the judge continued, I am ordering Mr. and Mrs. Carter to attend mandatory family therapy sessions with Emma if she chooses to participate. They will pay for these sessions. Emma will have no obligation to reconcile with them, but the option will be available if she desires it. I don't, I said immediately. I don't want therapy with them. I don't want a relationship with them. I want them to pay what they owe me, and then I want them out of my life forever. My father flinched like I'd slapped him. Emma, please, we're still your parents. We made mistakes, but mistakes? I stood up, my whole body shaking. You didn't make mistakes. You made choices. Every single day for 25 years, you chose to treat me like I didn't matter. You chose to prioritize Daniel. You chose to break your promises. You chose to steal from me. We love you, my mother said, her voice breaking. We've always loved you. No, you didn't. You can't love someone and treat them the way you treated me. Love isn't conditional. Love isn't a competition. Love doesn't leave your child hungry and alone while you throw parties for her brother. The words were pouring out of me now, years of pain and rage finally finding their voice. Do you know what real love looks like? Grandma Rose sending me $50 in an envelope because she knew I needed groceries. My roommate from college letting me stay with her rent-free for 3 months when I got evicted. My boss at the diner giving me extra shifts, even though we were overstaffed because she knew I was struggling. Those people loved me. You just tolerated me. My mother tried to speak, but nothing came out. She looked shattered. Completely, utterly shattered. Judge Morrison's gavel came down. My ruling stands. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, you have 90 days to pay the inheritance and educational funds. The punitive damages will be paid in installments over 2 years. If you fail to comply, I will authorize wage garnishment and asset seizure. Do you understand? My father nodded numbly. My mother just stared straight ahead. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down again, and it was over. People started moving, talking, gathering their things. But I just sat there frozen. It was done. I'd won. After years of being invisible, of being told I didn't matter, A judge had looked at my parents and said, "You were wrong. Pay her what she's owed." Mr. Hayes sat down next to me. "Emma, are you okay?" "I don't know," I admitted. I thought I'd feel happy, vindicated, but I just feel empty. "That's normal," he said gently. "You just confronted years of trauma. You exposed your parents' worst behavior in public. You stood up for yourself in a way you've never been able to before. It's going to take time to process all of this." Grandma Rose came over and took my hand. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get out of here. I'm taking you to lunch. A real lunch. The expensive kind." I let her pull me to my feet. As we walked toward the exit, I passed my parents. They were huddled together, both of them crying. My father reached out to me. "Emma, wait." I kept walking. Daniel was standing by the door. He looked like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. I walked right past him, too. Outside the courthouse, the sun was shining. It was a beautiful February day, cold but clear. I took a deep breath of fresh air and felt something shift inside me. I was free. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. "Where do you want to go?" Grandma Rose asked, linking her arm through mine. "Somewhere expensive," I said with a small laugh. "Somewhere Mom and Dad would never take me." We started walking toward Grandma's car. Behind us, I heard the courthouse doors open. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see who it was or what they wanted. That part of my life was over. But as we reached the parking lot, someone called my name. A voice I didn't recognize. "Emma Carter?" I turned around to see a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, carrying a briefcase. She had kind eyes and a warm smile. "My name is Patricia Mills," she said. "I'm a reporter with the Washington Post." I was in the courtroom today covering another case, but I couldn't help overhearing yours. "Would you be willing to talk to me about what happened to you?" I looked at Grandma Rose. She squeezed my hand. "It's your choice, sweetheart." I thought about all the other girls out there who might be going through what I went through. Girls who thought they were worthless because their parents treated them like they didn't matter. Girls who needed to know they weren't alone. "Yes," I said. "I'll talk to you." 3 weeks later, my story was published in the Washington Post. The headline read, "Daughter sues parents for favoritism. Judge awards $435,000 in landmark case." Within hours, it went viral. Within days, it was everywhere. CNN, NBC, Fox News, BBC. Everyone wanted to talk about the girl whose parents spent $300,000 on her brother's wedding while she ate ramen and slept in her car. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friend requests flooded my social media. Strangers sent me messages, some supportive, some hateful. People I hadn't spoken to since high school were suddenly reaching out, saying they'd always known something was wrong with my family. But the messages that mattered most came from other women. Hundreds of them, thousands. My parents did the same thing to me. I thought I was the only one. "Thank you for being brave enough to speak up. You gave me the courage to confront my family." I read every single one, and I cried. Not sad tears anymore. These were different. These were tears of recognition, of solidarity, of knowing I'd done something that mattered. Patricia Mills called me a week after the article published. "Emma, I've been getting interview requests for you from every major network. Are you interested?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to disappear, to take the money and start over somewhere quiet. But another part of me, the part that had been silenced for 25 years, wanted to keep talking. "Yes," I said. "I'll do interviews, but only if I can control the narrative. I'm not going to be some victim crying on daytime TV. I want to talk about systemic favoritism in families, about how parents damage their children, about financial abuse. You'll have complete control," Patricia promised. "I'll make sure of it." The interviews were surreal. Sitting across from Anderson Cooper, from Gayle King, from reporters who usually interviewed presidents and celebrities. They all asked the same basic questions, but I tried to give different answers each time. I wanted people to understand this wasn't just about me. It was about a pattern of behavior that destroys families. During one interview, the host asked, "Have your parents tried to contact you since the judgment?" "Every day," I admitted. Emails, texts, calls. They leave voicemails saying they're sorry, that they want to make things right. My mother sent me a 10-page letter explaining how her own childhood trauma made her favor my brother. My father offered to go to therapy, to do whatever it takes to rebuild our relationship. And what do you say to them? Nothing. I blocked their numbers, sent their letters back unopened. I meant what I said in that courtroom. I don't want a relationship with them. They had 25 years to be my parents. They chose not to be. Now they have to live with that choice. Some people praised me for setting boundaries. Others called me cruel, unforgiving, a daughter who'd turned her back on her family. The comment sections were brutal. She's just bitter and jealous. Parents don't owe their adult children anything. She's destroying her family over money. But for every hateful comment, there were 10 more that said, I see you. I believe you. You did the right thing. The money started coming in installments. My parents had to sell their house, the 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs with the perfectly manicured lawn and the 3-car garage. They moved into a modest apartment. My mother had to sell her jewelry. My father cashed out his retirement fund early and paid penalties. Daniel called me once. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. Emma, it's me. I want you to know that Jessica and I are getting divorced. It's final next month, and I've been thinking a lot about what Grandma said in court, about how I was complicit. She was right. I watched them destroy you, and I did nothing because it benefited me. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. And I'm going to therapy, trying to figure out how I became this person. Anyway, I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. You deserve to be happy. I saved the voicemail but never called him back. Maybe someday I would, but not yet. The wound was still too fresh. Grandma Rose became my rock during those weeks. She stayed with me in my tiny apartment, cooked me meals, held me when I cried, celebrated with me when the money cleared. She helped me find a financial advisor, someone who could help me invest wisely and make sure I'd never struggle again. What are you going to do now? She asked me one evening. We were sitting on my couch, drinking tea and watching the sunset through my narrow window. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to go back to school, get my master's degree, maybe my PhD. I've always wanted to do research in biochemical engineering. Then do it, she said simply. You have the money now. You have the freedom. Don't let what they did to you hold you back anymore. I'm scared, I whispered. What if I fail? What if they were right about me? Grandma Rose set down her tea and took both my hands in hers. Listen to me, Emma Carter. They were never right about you. You graduated summa cum laude while working 3 jobs. You survived poverty, neglect, and emotional abuse. You stood up in a courtroom and demanded justice. You are one of the strongest, most capable people I've ever known. And you can do anything you set your mind to. I started crying. Again. I'd cried more in the past month than I had in the previous 5 years combined. But these tears felt different. Cleansing, like I was finally letting go of all the poison my parents had poured into me. I love you, Grandma, I said. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you'll ever know. A month after the judgment, I got an unexpected visitor. I was in my apartment, working on graduate school applications, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Jessica standing there. She looked different. Her hair was shorter, less styled. She wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of designer clothes. She looked more real, more human. Hi, she said nervously. I hope it's okay that I came. I got your address from the court documents. I know that's probably creepy, but I really needed to talk to you. I should have closed the door, should have told her to leave. But something in her eyes stopped me. She looked desperate, lost. Come in, I heard myself say. She sat on my worn couch, the same couch I'd bought from Goodwill 3 years ago. Her eyes swept around my small apartment, the peeling paint, the secondhand furniture, the tiny kitchen with outdated appliances. This is where you lived while we were planning a $300,000 wedding, she said, her voice breaking. Oh my God, Emma, I had no idea. No idea at all. Why are you here, Jessica? She pulled an envelope from her purse. I'm divorcing Daniel. The papers are final, and I wanted to give you this. I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000. What is this? It's half of what your parents gave us as a wedding gift, she said. $100,000 that they probably should have given to you. I know it doesn't make up for anything. I know it doesn't fix what happened. But it's yours. It was always supposed to be yours. I stared at the check, speechless. I also wanted to tell you something else, Jessica continued. After the trial, I did some digging. Into Daniel's finances. Into what your parents had been giving him over the years. Emma, it was so much worse than even you knew. She pulled out more papers. Bank statements. Transfer receipts. Credit card statements. They were giving him $5,000 a month. Every month for the past 7 years. That's $420,000 on top of everything else. And he was spending it on luxury cars, expensive trips, designer clothes. While you were eating ramen, the room started spinning. I couldn't breathe. $420,000 on top of everything else. Nearly $1 million total that my parents had poured into Daniel while I scraped by on minimum wage and student loans. How did you find all this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I was his wife. I had access to his accounts during the divorce proceedings. When I saw the pattern of deposits, I started asking questions. His lawyer tried to hide it, but my lawyer was better. Jessica leaned forward. Emma, your parents didn't just favor Daniel. They were funding his entire lifestyle. The fancy restaurants he took me to? Their money. The vacation to Europe he surprised me with? Their money. Even the down payment on our condo. I thought we'd saved for it together, but it was all them. Does he know you're here? No, and I don't care if he finds out. I'm done protecting him. I'm done being part of a family that could do what they did to you. She wiped her eyes. I keep thinking about our wedding. How happy I was. How special I felt. And you were probably working a double shift somewhere, eating vending machine food, while we had a 12-tier cake and a live orchestra. It wasn't your fault, I said, even though part of me still wanted to hate her. Maybe not, but I benefited from it. I lived in luxury built on your suffering. That makes me complicit. She stood up. I'm testifying. If you want to go back to court and sue for the monthly payments too, I'll testify. I have all the records. Every deposit, every amount, every date. I'll help you get every penny they gave him. I looked at the check in my hand. $50,000. Money that could pay off the rest of my student loans. Money that could fund my graduate education. Money that represented Jessica's attempt at making things right. Keep your money, I said, handing the check back to her. Her eyes widened. What? No, Emma, please. Not because I don't appreciate it, but because you're going to need it. You're starting over too. Use it to build a life that doesn't depend on the Carter family money. But you deserve it. I already got what I deserved. The court gave me justice. This is between you and your conscience. And honestly, the best thing you can do for me is to be happy. Build a good life. Don't let what happened to me happen to your future daughters. Jessica started crying. Real ugly crying. I was so blind, so stupid. I thought I'd married into the perfect family. Perfect families don't exist, I said. Only families that hide their dysfunction better than others. After Jessica left, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time. The sun set. The room grew dark. But I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there thinking about everything that had happened. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emma, it's Daniel. Please don't delete this. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something. Mom and Dad are in the hospital. Dad had a heart attack. It's serious. They're asking for you. My first instinct was to delete it, to block the number and pretend I'd never seen it. They'd been dead to me for weeks now. Why should I care if my father was dying? But another part of me, a smaller, quieter part, felt something. Not love. Not even concern, really. Just curiosity. What would they say to me now, with death possibly hours away? Would they finally take real responsibility? Would they admit what they'd done without excuses? I called Grandma Rose. Did you hear about Dad? I asked. Yes, Daniel called me too. I'm at the hospital now. There was a pause. I won't tell you what to do, Emma, but I will say this. Whatever you decide, make sure it's for you. Not for them. Not for anyone else. For you. I hung up and stared at my ceiling. The smart thing would be to stay home. To protect myself from more manipulation, more hurt. They didn't deserve my presence. They didn't deserve anything from me. But I needed closure. Real closure. Not a courtroom judgment or a viral article or a check in the mail. I needed to look them in the eyes one last time and know with absolute certainty that I was done. I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital. The ICU was on the 4th floor, sterile, cold, smelling of antiseptic and fear. I found my father's room easily. Grandma Rose was standing outside, and Daniel was pacing the hallway. When Daniel saw me, he stopped walking. "You came. Don't read anything into it," I said flatly. "I'm not here for a reunion. I know. Thank you for coming. It means, where is he?" Daniel gestured to the room. "Mom's in there with him. He's awake but weak. The doctors say the next 48 hours are critical." I pushed open the door. My father looked small in the hospital bed. Old, fragile. He'd lost weight since the trial. His skin was gray, his eyes sunken. Machines beeped around him, monitoring his failing heart. My mother sat in a chair beside him, holding his hand. When she saw me, she stood up so fast the chair scraped loudly against the floor. "Emma," she breathed, "you came. Thank God you came." "I'm not here to forgive you," I said immediately. "I'm here because I needed to see this with my own eyes. To make sure it's real." My father's eyes opened. "Emma, baby girl." "Don't call me that," he flinched. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I know I can never make it right, but I need you to know. I love you." "I've always loved you." "No, you haven't." "I have." His voice cracked, and one of the machines started beeping faster. "I loved you, but I didn't know how to show it. I didn't know how to be fair. My own father destroyed me with his favoritism, and I swore I'd never do that to my children. But somehow I became him anyway." "That's not an excuse," I said coldly. "Lots of people have bad parents. They don't all turn around and abuse their own children." My mother stepped toward me. "Emma, please. We've lost everything. Our house, our savings, our reputation. Everyone knows what we did. We've been ostracized by our friends, our church, our community. Your father's heart attack was brought on by stress. We're paying for what we did. Isn't that enough?" I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd given birth to me, who'd fed me and clothed me and put a roof over my head, who'd also made me feel worthless every single day of my life. "No," I said simply. "It's not enough. Because you're only sorry that you got caught. You're only sorry that there were consequences. If I hadn't sued you, if that recording hadn't existed, if Grandma Rose hadn't shown up with evidence, you'd still be treating me like garbage and pretending you were good parents." "That's not true," my father wheezed. "Yes, it is!" The machines beeped wildly. A nurse rushed in. "You need to keep him calm. His heart can't take the stress." I looked at my father one last time, at this man who'd given me life but never really saw me, who'd had every opportunity to love me and chose not to. "Goodbye, Dad," I said. "I hope you recover. I really do. Not because I care about you, but because I want you to live a long life knowing what you lost. Knowing that you destroyed your relationship with your daughter because you were too weak to break the cycle." I walked out of that hospital room and didn't look back. Daniel was still in the hallway, leaning against the wall. He looked up when he heard the door close. "How is he?" he asked. "Alive, which is more than he deserves." I started walking toward the elevator. "Emma, wait!" Daniel followed me. "I know you hate me. I know I don't deserve your time or your forgiveness. But I need to tell you something." I stopped, but didn't turn around. "Make it quick." I gave them the money. Now I turned. "What? The monthly payments?" "The $5,000 Mom and Dad were giving me. I gave it all back to them. Every penny I could trace. It came out to $380,000. I liquidated everything. My investment accounts, my retirement fund, even sold my car. I gave it all back and told them to give it to you." I stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. They refused, he continued, his voice breaking. They said it was my money, that I'd earned it, that you were being vindictive and they wouldn't reward your behavior. So I set up a trust fund in your name instead. $380,000. It's yours. My lawyer will contact you with the details. Why? The word came out harsh, suspicious. Why would you do that? Because Grandma Rose was right. Because Jessica was right. Because you were right. Tears streamed down his face. I was a coward who let our parents destroy you because it was easier than standing up to them. I benefited from your suffering, and I didn't care because I was too selfish to see past my own comfort. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. This is a letter. I wrote down everything I remember. Every time they favored me. Every time they hurt you. Every moment I should have defended you but didn't. It's all there. If you ever want to go back to court for more, use it. I'll testify. I'll do whatever you need. I took the envelope, my hands shaking. This doesn't fix anything. I know. Nothing can fix what happened to you. But maybe it's a start. Maybe in 10 years or 20 or 50, you'll be able to look at me without seeing the brother who abandoned you. Maybe we can build something new, something real. I don't know if that's possible, I said honestly. I know, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn it anyway. He wiped his eyes. I'm going to therapy 3 times a week. I'm learning about family systems and favoritism and golden child syndrome. I'm trying to understand how I became this person so I never become him again. Good, I said. Do it for yourself, though. Not for me. I can't be your reason to change. I can't carry that weight. I understand. He stepped back. I won't contact you again unless you reach out first. But Emma, I'm proud of you for everything you accomplished despite them. Despite me, you're the strongest person I know. I didn't respond. I just walked to the elevator and pressed the button. As the doors closed, I saw Daniel standing there, his hand raised in a small wave. A goodbye that might last forever. Grandma Rose was waiting for me in the parking lot. How do you feel? She asked. Empty, exhausted, free. I leaned against her car. Is it wrong that I don't care if he dies? That I feel nothing? No, sweetheart. It's not wrong. You don't owe them your grief. You don't owe them anything. We drove back to my apartment in silence. When we got inside, I finally opened Daniel's envelope. Page after page of confessions, memories, admissions of complicity. I was 8 when I first realized they treated her differently. Emma asked for a new bike for her birthday. They bought her a used one from a garage sale. 3 months later, they bought me a brand new racing bike that cost $600. I was 16 when Emma got accepted to Stanford. I heard Dad tell Mom that girls don't need expensive educations because Emma would probably just become a housewife anyway. I was 22 when Emma called me crying because she couldn't afford her rent. I had $15,000 in my checking account from Mom and Dad's monthly deposits. I told her I couldn't help. I went to Cabo the next week. I was 27 when I got married. I knew Emma was struggling. I knew she was in debt. I knew the wedding cost more than most people earn in years. I didn't care. I wanted my perfect day, and I got it at her expense. The list went on. And on and on. 25 years of cruelty, documented in my brother's handwriting. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant. But instead, I just felt tired. What are you going to do with all this? Grandma Rose asked, reading over my shoulder. I don't know yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Right now, I just want to move forward. 3 months later, I enrolled in a PhD program at MIT. Full ride. Stipend included. I was going to study biochemical engineering and focus on making medications more affordable for low-income families. I moved to Boston. Got a small apartment near campus. Started fresh. The money from the lawsuit sat in investment accounts, growing. The trust fund Daniel set up remained untouched. I wasn't ready to accept it yet. Maybe I never would be. My father survived his heart attack but had to retire early. My parents downsized again, moving to a small condo in Florida. They sent me birthday cards that I returned unopened. They sent Christmas gifts that I donated to charity. Daniel kept his word. He never contacted me unless I reached out first. Which I didn't, not yet. Maybe someday. Jessica started a nonprofit organization for women escaping financially abusive family situations. She asked me to be on the board. I declined, but I donated money anonymously. Her work was important, even if I couldn't be involved directly. Grandma Rose visited me every month. We'd have lunch at expensive restaurants, her favorite activity. "We're making up for lost time," she'd say, ordering the most expensive items on the menu with a mischievous smile. One year after the trial, I gave my first lecture at MIT. It was on family systems and how they affect educational outcomes. The lecture hall was packed. Afterward, a young woman approached me. She was 19, maybe 20. She had dark circles under her eyes and wore clothes that had seen better days. "Professor Carter," she said nervously, "I read your story about your parents, about the lawsuit. And I just wanted to say, thank you. My parents do the same thing to me. They spend everything on my brother while I work 3 jobs to afford community college. I thought I was crazy. I thought I was being dramatic. But your story made me realize it's real. It's abuse. And I'm going to do something about it." I looked at this young woman, this stranger who could have been me 5 years ago, and felt something shift inside me. This was why I'd spoken up. This was why it mattered, not for the money, not for revenge, but for every other invisible daughter out there who needed to hear that she wasn't alone, that she wasn't crazy, that she deserved better. "What's your name?" I asked. "Sophie." "Sophie, come to my office tomorrow. Let's talk about your situation. Maybe I can help." Her eyes filled with tears. "Really? Really? No one should have to go through what I went through. Not if I can help it." That night I sat in my apartment, my real apartment, with new furniture and fresh paint and a kitchen that actually worked, and reflected on everything that had happened. I'd lost my parents, lost my brother, at least for now, lost the fantasy of the loving family I'd always wanted, but I'd gained something too. I'd gained my voice, my power, my sense of self-worth that didn't depend on their approval. I'd gained freedom from the weight of their expectations and their cruelty. I'd gained a future that was entirely my own. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Emma, it's Dad. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm dying." Real dying this time. "The doctors say I have weeks, maybe days. I understand if you don't come. I understand if you never forgive me. But I want you to know that my biggest regret, my only real regret, is not loving you the way you deserved. You were always enough. You were always worthy. I was just too broken to see it. I'm sorry. I love you. Dad." I read the message 3 times. Then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, not out of spite, but because I'd already said everything I needed to say in that hospital room a year ago. His death, whenever it came, wasn't my responsibility. His guilt wasn't my burden to absolve. His regrets weren't my problem to solve. I was done carrying their weight. I was done being the daughter who begged for love from people who didn't know how to give it. I was just Emma now, Dr. Emma Carter, 26 years old, PhD candidate, survivor, fighter, free, and that was enough. I was enough. I had always been enough.